Picture a plain black garden hose, coiled up on the south side of your house, just sitting there in the afternoon sun. Now go uncoil it and turn it on. The water that comes out is hot, not lukewarm. Hot enough to wash dishes. Hot enough that you pull your hand back, and it costs you nothing. No gas, no electric bill, no new tank. Just sunlight, a cheap hose, and a trick the Amish have used for generations. The average American household spends somewhere between $400 and $600 a year just heating water. It's the second biggest energy cost in most homes, right behind heating and cooling the air. And a big chunk of that is going to warm water you're about to pour right down the drain. So here's what I'm going to walk you through today. A handful of simple, almost forgotten ways to get hot water for next to nothing, using stuff you probably already own or can grab for $1 or $2, and I'm going to save the best one for the very end. It's the one that quietly knocks money off your bill every single month of the year, not just in July. It's so simple, a child could set it up in an afternoon, and once it's running, you forget it's even there. I'll name it when we get there. For now, just know it's coming. And it's the reason a lot of folks who learn this never look at their water heater the same way again. But let's start with the hose, because that's the part nobody believes until they feel it. Let me agitate something first. Let me make you feel the waste, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. Every morning, you turn on the hot tap, and you wait. The water runs cold for 10, 15, 20 seconds while the hot stuff travels from your tank, through the walls, out to your faucet. All that cold water you let run, that was heated water sitting in the pipe that went cold overnight. You paid to heat it. Then it cooled off. Then you flushed it down the drain to make room for more. You do that 2, 3, 4 times a day. Kitchen sink, bathroom sink, shower, every single one starts with a slug of wasted, already paid for warm water going straight to the sewer. Now add your water heater itself. If it's an older tank model, it's sitting in your basement or your garage doing one thing all day and all night. Whether you're home or not, keeping 40 or 50 gallons piping hot at 2 in the morning when everyone's asleep, it's like leaving your oven on 24 hours a day just in case you might want to roast. That standby loss alone can be 10 to 20% of the whole bill. Money burned to keep water hot that nobody's using, and the worst part? Most folks think the only fix is to call somebody, call the plumber, call the gas company, buy a fancy new tankless unit for $2,000 or $3,000 installed, sign up for a service plan. I'm not here to tell you plumbers are crooks. They're not. A good plumber is worth every penny when a pipe bursts at midnight. But here's the quiet truth they don't lead with. A whole lot of what you pay for hot water, you can cut down yourself with your own 2 hands for the price of a sandwich. And once you know how, you simply need them less. So let's get into it. Let's start with that hose, because it's the headline and it absolutely works. The first method is the solar batch hose. And here's the surprising part. A standard black garden hose, the cheap kind, is one of the most efficient little solar collectors you can own, and almost nobody uses it that way. Here's what's actually happening when you leave it in the sun. The color black absorbs nearly all the light that hits it and turns it into heat. That's just physics. A black surface in direct summer sun can climb past 140 degrees. The rubber and vinyl of the hose hold that heat and pass it straight into the water sitting inside. A 50-foot hose holds roughly 2 to 3 gallons of water. On a clear day, that water can reach 110, 120, even 130 degrees after just an hour or 2 of baking. Think about that. 120 degrees is right about where your water heater is probably set indoors. You're getting tank temperature water out of a hose for free off the sun. Here's how to do it right. Take a dark colored hose, black is best, and lay it out where it gets full afternoon sun. A south-facing wall, a fence, a shed roof, a driveway. Coil it loosely so the loops don't shade each other too much or stretch it out in a long S. Leave the far end closed or capped. Let it sit through the hot part of the day. When you want hot water, open it up. The first couple gallons that come out are the hot ones. After that, you're pulling fresh cold water through so it cools back down. This is perfect for an outdoor shower after yard work. Rinsing off the dog, washing your hands at the garden, filling a basin to soak tools. The Amish and plenty of off-grid families have leaned on exactly this idea for generations. Just a dark vessel and the sun, no moving parts, nothing to break. Now here's the safety part, and I mean this. On a really hot, bright day, that water can come out hotter than you expect. Scalding hot, over 130, even 140 degrees in peak summer. So always crack it open and test it on your wrist before it touches your face or a child or an animal. Treat the first burst with respect. And one more thing, because it matters, do not drink from a regular garden hose and don't use that water for cooking. Most standard hoses are not made for drinking water. They can carry chemicals you don't want in your body, and heat makes that worse. If you ever want hose water, you can actually buy a hose labeled drinking water safe or potable, usually marked in white or blue, often sold for RVs and campers. That kind is made for it. The cheap black one is for washing, rinsing, and bathing only, so that's free hot water from the sun, but it's seasonal and it's outdoors, and I know what you're thinking. What about the rest of the year? And what about inside the house? That's where the real savings live, and that's exactly where we're headed next. The second method costs you nothing but a few minutes, and most people have never touched the dial that controls it. Go look at your water heater. There's a thermostat on it. On an electric model, there are usually two behind little access panels. On a gas model, there's a dial right near the bottom. And here's the thing, a huge number of them are set way too high, straight from the factory or from whoever installed it, often 140 degrees or higher. Here's what's actually happening at 140. Your tank is working harder all day and all night to hold that water scorching hot. The hotter you keep it, the faster it bleeds heat into the room around it, and the more energy it burns just standing still. On top of that, 140 degrees is genuinely dangerous. At that temperature, water can give a serious burn in just a few seconds. That's a real risk for older folks and for little kids. So here's the move. Turn it down to 120 degrees. That's the number most experts point to as the sweet spot. It's hot enough to keep things sanitary and to run your shower and your dishwasher just fine, but cool enough to stop wasting energy and to stop scalding people. The Department of Energy has long said that for every 10 degrees you knock off the setting, you can trim a few percent off your water heating cost. Drop it from 140 to 120 and you might shave a real chunk off the bill, plus you make the whole house safer. How to do it? On a gas unit, just turn the dial to the medium mark or wherever 120 lands, easy. On an electric unit, and this is important, shut the power off at the breaker first. Always. Then take off the access panel, peel back the insulation, and you'll see a thermostat with a small screw or dial. Set both the upper and lower ones to the same temperature, 120. Put it all back, turn the power on, and wait a few hours for the tank to settle. Then run the hot tap and check it with a cooking thermometer in a cup of water. If your unit is real old, or you're not comfortable around the wiring, there is zero shame in having a pro set it on their next visit. Better safe than sorry, but for most folks, it's a 2-minute job and free money every month after. Now, turning the dial down helps, but your tank is still losing heat through its walls every hour of every day, and that brings me to the next one, which might be the cheapest insurance policy in your whole house. The third method is a water heater blanket. And the reason it works is the same reason a coat keeps you warm in January. Here's the picture. An older tank is basically a big metal can full of hot water sitting in a cold room. Metal is a lousy insulator, so heat is constantly leaking out through the sides of that tank into your basement or garage, and your heater has to keep firing back up to replace it. That's the standby loss I mentioned. It's heat you paid for, escaping into a room you don't even need warm. A water heater insulating blanket, sometimes called a jacket, is just a thick wrap of insulation that goes around the tank and holds that heat inside where it belongs. It costs around $20 to $40 at the hardware store, and on an older, poorly insulated tank, it can cut that standby heat loss by a good chunk, often enough to pay for itself in well under a year. Here's how to do it safely, because this part trips people up. First, figure out what kind of tank you have. If it's a newer, well-insulated model, the manufacturer may say you don't need a blanket and shouldn't add one. Many newer tanks are already wrapped tight inside, so check first. If it's an older bare metal tank, it's a great candidate. For an electric tank, wrapping it is simple. Cut the blanket to fit, leave the top and the thermostat access panels clear, and tape it snug. For a gas tank, you have to be more careful. Never cover the top. Never cover the burner access at the bottom. Never block the air vents or the flue at the top where exhaust escapes. A gas unit needs to breathe and it needs to vent. Blocking it is dangerous. So you only wrap the smooth sides, keeping everything top and bottom wide open, and you keep the insulation well away from the flue in the burner. If any of that makes you nervous, leave the gas one to a pro. But the electric one, anybody can do it on a Saturday morning with a roll of tape and a pair of scissors. So now you've got the sun heating water outside, a smarter thermostat setting, and a tank that holds its heat. But there's a thief living inside your water heater that's making the whole thing work harder, and almost nobody knows to deal with it. That's next, and it might add years to the life of your tank. The fourth method is flushing the sediment out of your tank, and here's the part that surprises people. Your water heater is slowly filling up with what amounts to grit and sand at the bottom. Here's what's happening. All the water that comes into your house carries dissolved minerals, calcium, lime, little bits of sediment. As that water gets heated, those minerals fall out and settle to the bottom of the tank. Year after year, a layer builds up down there. In hard water areas, it can get to be inches thick. Now think about what that does. On a gas heater, the burner is underneath. So now it's trying to heat your water through a thick crust of mineral gunk, like trying to boil a pot of water with a layer of sand caked on the bottom. It takes longer, it burns more fuel, and you'll sometimes hear it. That popping, rumbling kettle sound an old water heater makes, that's water bubbling up through the sediment. That's the sound of waste. On top of that, all that buildup steals room that used to hold hot water, so you run out faster, and it can rot the tank from the inside and shorten its life by years. Here's how to flush it. Once a year is plenty. First, turn the heater off. On gas, set it to pilot or off. On electric, shut the breaker, and this matters because heating elements with no water around them will burn out. Then, shut off the cold water supply going into the tank. Hook a regular garden hose, here's that hose again, to the drain valve near the bottom, and run the other end to a floor drain or outside downhill. Open the drain valve, and open a hot tap somewhere in the house to let air in so it flows. Let it run until the water coming out runs clear instead of cloudy and full of grit. For a good flush, open the cold supply back up in bursts to stir the bottom and push the sediment out. Then close the drain, let the tank fill all the way, and only then turn the heat back on. A word of caution, that water comes out scalding. Use a hose rated for hot water, run it somewhere safe, and keep kids and pets clear. And if you've got a real old tank that's never been flushed in 15 years, sometimes that drain valve can get stubborn or start to leak. If yours won't cooperate, that's a fair time to call somebody rather than force it. Do that once a year, and your heater runs more efficiently, lasts longer, and quits making that awful rumble free, basically. Just your time and that same cheap hose. Now let me check in with you, because we're about halfway, and you've already got enough here to start saving, but I told you I was saving the best one for last, and I meant it. The big one is a way to get free, preheated water flowing into your tank, so your heater barely has to lift a finger all year round, not just summer. Keep that in your back pocket. We're almost there. But first, a couple more that pay off fast. The fifth method is killing the weight at the tap and stopping all that warm water you flush down the drain every single day. Remember the agitation from the start? That cold slug you run off every morning waiting for hot water to arrive? Here's what's really going on. The hot water travels from your tank through bare copper or plastic pipe, sometimes 30, 40, 50 feet of it, before it reaches your faucet. All along that run, the pipe is cold, the air around it is cold, so the hot water gives up its heat to the pipe and the wall as it travels. Overnight, the water sitting in those pipes goes stone cold. Every morning you flush it out and start over. So here's the cheap fix that makes a real difference. Pipe insulation, foam sleeves that slip right over your hot water pipes. They come in 6-foot lengths, pre-slit down the side, and they cost about $2 to $3 a piece. You buy the size that matches your pipe diameter, 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch, the most common sizes. Here's how. Go to where you can see the pipes, usually the basement, the crawl space, the back of a cabinet. Focus on the hot water lines first, especially the first several feet coming right off the top of the water heater, because that's where the most heat escapes. Slip the foam over the pipe. The slit just pops open and snaps shut around it. Cut it to length with scissors or a knife. Wrap the corners and the joints. Tape the seams if you want it really snug. That's it. What does it get you? The hot water holds its heat as it travels, so it arrives faster and hotter. You waste less down the drain waiting. The pipes don't go as cold overnight. And that first run in the morning is shorter, which means less water and less energy wasted day after day after day. It's one of those little jobs that costs maybe $15 for the whole house and quietly pays you back for years. While you're down there, here's a bonus that costs nothing. Insulate the cold water line too, just for the first few feet coming into the tank. That keeps warm air in the room from heating the cold pipe and condensing into drips, which stops that puddle some folks find under the tank in summer. 2 birds, 1 cheap foam tube. So now your pipes hold their heat, but there's a place in your home where you dump more hot water than anywhere else, gallons of it, perfectly hot, straight down the drain. And there's an old trick to grab some of that heat back before it's gone. That's coming, and it leads us right into the big finale. The 6th method is catching the heat from your own shower drain, and once you understand it, you'll wonder why every house doesn't do it. Here's the picture. You take a hot shower, that water hits you, warms you up, and then runs straight down the drain at 100 degrees or more. Gone. All that heat you paid for, swirling away into the sewer. Of all the hot water in your house, the shower is where you use the most and lose the most, all in one shot. Now, there's a clever piece of equipment called a drain water heat recovery unit. It's a coil of copper that wraps around your drain pipe. Here's the beautiful part of how it works. As that warm drain water spirals down the inside of the pipe, the cold, fresh water heading toward your shower runs through the copper coil wrapped around the outside. The heat passes from the draining water into the incoming water, so the cold water feeding your shower gets a free warm-up from the water you just used. It can recover a meaningful share of that heat, and because it works in real time while you're showering, it actually helps most exactly when you're using the most. Now, I'll be straight with you. This one's a bit more of an install, and a copper unit isn't a $1 item. It runs more like a couple $100, and it works best on a vertical drain pipe, so it suits a basement under an upstairs bathroom. For some folks, that's a weekend project. For others, it's worth having a plumber set it while they're already there. I'm including it because it's real, it's proven, and it's the kind of thing the industry rarely brings up. But it makes the point perfectly. The heat you already paid for is worth grabbing back instead of letting it run away. And that idea, grabbing heat that's already there instead of buying it twice, is the heart of the very last method. The big one, the one I've been holding back since the start. So let's get to it. Here's the finale. The single most valuable trick of the whole bunch, a solar preheat loop that feeds warm water into your water heater so your heater barely has to work, and it pays you back month after month. Remember that black hose in the sun from the very beginning? We used it for an outdoor shower. Now we're going to put that same idea to work for your whole house all year, and this is where it gets good. Here's what's actually happening. Your water heater's job is to take cold water, usually 50, 60 degrees coming out of the ground, and lift it all the way up to 120. The bigger that jump, the more energy it burns. Most of the cost is in that climb. But what if the water arriving at your tank wasn't 50 degrees? What if the sun warmed it to 80, 90, 100 degrees before it ever got there? Then your heater only has to finish the job. It does a fraction of the work, and you pay a fraction of the cost. That's a solar preheater. And in its simplest, most honest form, it's exactly what the off-grid and Amish-minded folks have always done. A dark coil of hose or pipe mounted where the sun hits it hardest, with the incoming water routed through it on its way to the tank. Here's the simplest version anyone can picture. You take a long coil of black hose, or better, black plastic poly pipe, and you mount it on a south-facing roof or wall or a sunny rack in the yard. You build a simple box behind it, paint the inside black, and put a sheet of old glass or clear plastic over the front. Now it's a solar collector. The sun pours in through the glass, gets trapped like the inside of a parked car, and roasts that coil. Water moving slowly through the coil soaks up that heat. You run the line so your cold supply passes through the warm coil first, then continues on to your water heater. The water shows up pre-warmed, free, even without the box, even just a long dark coil in full sun plumbed inline ahead of the tank. You'll preheat your water on every sunny day. On a bright afternoon, that water can arrive 30, 40, 50 degrees warmer than it would have. And every one of those degrees is a degree your heater didn't have to pay to add. That's money in your pocket on every shower, every load of dishes, every load of laundry, for as long as the sun keeps coming up. Which, last I checked, is forever. That's your free hot water forever, from $1's worth of hose and a little ingenuity. Now let me give you the honest cautions, because I want you to do this right and safe. First, the water you drink and cook with has to be clean. If you're feeding this into your home's potable system, use pipe and hose that are rated for drinking water. Black polyethylene pipe rated for potable water is the right material, not a random garden hose. Don't let the cheap part poison the good part. Second, you have to think about freezing. If you live somewhere it gets below freezing, water sitting in an outdoor coil will freeze and can split your pipe. So in cold climates, this is a system you drain down for winter, or you build it to bypass and empty when the temperature drops. The simplest setups are seasonal, spring through fall, and that's still most of the year. Third, where it ties into your home plumbing, you may want a plumber to make that final connection, especially to add a simple bypass valve and to keep everything to code. There's no shame in that. You can build the whole collector yourself for almost nothing and just have a pro do the 10-minute hookup. You've still done 90% of it with your own hands, and you understand exactly what it's doing. And here's the thing, nobody tells you, even on cloudy days, even in cooler weather, water sitting in a dark coil outdoors usually ends up at least as warm as the groundwater, often warmer. So you almost never lose. The worst case is your heater works the same as it always did. The best case, and the usual case on a sunny day, is it barely works at all. That's the one I wanted you to have most of all. Not because it's fancy, but because it attacks the biggest cost, that long climb from cold to hot, and it does it with sunlight, which never sends a bill. So let's pull it all together, because look at what you've got now. A black hose for free hot water outdoors, a thermostat turned down to a safe, efficient 120 degrees, a $20 blanket holding the heat in your tank, a yearly flush that clears out the grit and saves your heater, foam sleeves that stop your pipes from bleeding heat into the walls, a way to claw back the warmth from your shower drain, and the big one, a sun-fed coil that pre-warms your water before your heater ever touches it. Not one of those needed a contractor's invoice. Not one of them needed a fancy new appliance. Most of them cost less than a single restaurant dinner. And together, they can take a real bite out of that $400 to $600 a year and put it back where it belongs, which is in your pocket. That's the quiet truth under all of this. You were never as dependent as they made you feel. The hot water was sitting there in the sunlight the whole time. The savings were sitting inside your own pipes the whole time. You just hadn't been shown where to look. And now you have. So here's what I'll leave you with. There's a certain kind of satisfaction in standing in your own yard, turning on a plain black hose, and feeling warm water run over your hands, knowing the sun did that for free and nobody sent you a bill. That feeling is what this is really about. It's not just the money. It's knowing you can take care of yourself with simple things the way folks did for a long time before any of us had a monthly statement to dread. This channel is all about exactly that. Getting more out of what you already own instead of paying somebody for what you could do yourself. Squeezing the value out of the simple stuff most people walk right past. Now I want to hear from you. Tell me in the comments, what does your water heater sound like? Does it make that rumbling, popping kettle noise when it heats up? If it does, you've got sediment down there, and that fourth method is calling your name. Leave a comment and let me know, because I read them, and I want to know how many of you have been hearing that sound for years without knowing what it was. And if you're the kind of person who's tired of overpaying for things you could handle yourself, do me a favor and subscribe so you can stand alongside everybody else here who refuses to be taken for a ride. We're a good crowd to run with, because next time I'm going to show you something about your refrigerator. There's a part on the back of it that almost everybody ignores, and ignoring it is quietly running up your electric bill every single month. It takes 5 minutes and a cheap brush to fix. And once you see it, you'll check it on every fridge you ever own. I'll see. Now, before you go, let me show you something even better. With just a simple copper coil, you can make free hot water that lasts forever. The energy companies do not want you knowing this one. It's starting right now.